I want to say something seriously.
Yeah.
I'm joking tonight for a little boy who is very ill in a hospital in Northern California. I promised him I would get big laughs. If I do, he lives. If I don't, he's gone.
This is indeed a disturbing universe.
So we've reached the 9th episode of The Simpsons, Life on the Fast Lane. It's number 7G11. It originally aired on March 18th, 1990. It was written by John Swartzwelder, directed by David Silverman, and the showrunners were Matt Groening, Sam Simon, and James L. Brooks. And this episode is just as well written as the previous two by John Swartzwelder. But unfortunately, these episodes about Homer and Marge's marital problems just bore the crap out of me because we all know these two aren't really splitting up. But that said, it's still a pretty good episode for season 1, but it's well below average if you're looking at it in terms of the entire series. So if you've never seen it, you shouldn't skip it. But even if you have, I've got a few extra things I can add to this episode, like a few ad-libbed outtakes from Albert Brooks, recorded while he was doing the voice for Jacques, the horny French bowling instructor who's thirsty for Marge. So let's just get this over with.
Hi, this is David Silverman,
Matt Groening,
Jim Brooks,
Al Jean,
and we're here to talk about an episode that was originally called Bjorn to be Wild, but we changed it from a Swedish guy to a French guy, I guess.
that was Albert Brooks, who came in and said, I don't want to be Swedish, I want to be French, it'll be funnier. And he was right.
So the story begins with Bart and Lisa making breakfast for Marge's birthday, and we very quickly find out that Homer has no idea.
I think he forgot, Mom.
I think by this time we had a floor plan for the house and the designs for all the rooms.
I remember very early on that I really wanted there to be a consistent floor plan to the house and a geography to Springfield. And we drew remember we had a map of Springfield, and we really had the house laid out. And then we realized that when we wanted a joke where the closet was next to the bathroom door, we would switch things around. We quickly gave up on all that. There's a vague blueprint, but there's a lot of inconsistencies.
The house actually has a fairly steady blueprint, but we'll change a few things when we need to, especially things like where the basement door is.
Yeah, I think their house is next door to the school, the power plant, and Moe's. Various points of the series.
So Homer quickly goes to the mall to buy a gift for Marge's birthday.
Too exciting.
Jim, that was your line, I think.
Of course, the mall changes whenever we have a new show and we want different titles.
Patty, he's out buying me something right now.
Hey, look! They forgot to paint Marge's pearls in this shot.
Patty and Selma, you have to have the earrings and the hairstyles to tell them apart. But actually, it took me a while to tell them apart.
Yeah, I think Patty's the one that isn't interested in men.
Or another way to put that would be, she's a man-hating lesbian.
Exactly, and she has the roundish hair.
Sometimes she has a pea earring. That's very helpful.
The place where the waiters sing.
It's an example of Maggie sucking the pacifier all the time, which we got rid of. It's because it became too distracting for the dialogue.
Homer?
Be right there.
Homer, we're having dinner tonight at the Singing Sirloin.
That sounds delightful.
I like Maggie pouring stuff off.
Homer whistling Peer Gynt. I don't know why.
Because it was free, I'm sure.
More freakish early designs.
Yes, always a pleasure. It's tricky to time because you had to get the joke enough and still pan over and get to the next table. So that took a few shots at it.
I'm 34 years old.
And here's another little time problem we have with the show. Marge is 34 in the year 1990.
And Bart
He
is
graduated
10.
from high school in 1974, and here it is 10 years later. How old is she again? Oh yeah, 34.
It was very depressing when I realized I was older than Homer.
Maggie's been a baby for a long time too, hasn't she?
We talked about that for a minute. I think about a minute and a half.
Should we age them?
You're not putting on any of my perfume.
I'm saving it for a special occasion.
What the hell are you talking about? There's gallons of it.
I guess it's one of the Bart saying, "What the hell are you talking about?" is one of the things you get letters on, right?
Back then, now it's considered family entertainment.
For some reason, the label on the French perfume bottle has suddenly changed colors on us. So then Homer reveals his gift, which is a bowling ball with his name on it. Obviously not something an intelligent human being would do.
Where the waiters just leave, like that was supposed to happen.
I remember at the time debating if him giving her a ball that said Homer was too crass, but it won an Emmy, so I guess it wasn't.
That's right, you heard Al Jean correctly. They won an Emmy for this episode, which is probably one of many reasons the Simpsons producers learned over time not to tinker so much with the scripts written by John Swartzwelder. So at this point, Marge is obviously angry enough to do something that she normally wouldn't do. And that's how the rest of this awkward episode takes shape.
I'm keeping the ball. For myself.
What? But you don't know how to bowl. Whoops.
Greatest possible reading of the word whoops.
Whoops.
There's a nice exterior that Eric Stefani designed.
Remember, it was funny that the bowling alley was an odd place for an illicit affair, and that a suave bowling instructor seemed like a really hilarious, man to like be horning in on your wife.
The original idea I had why it was Barney's Bolorama is that Barney Gumble owned the Bolorama, and that was a backstory that we hadn't explained yet. But then I think we switched it, and I don't remember what the explanation. He worked there, right?
He worked there because we just couldn't conceive of him owning a bowling alley.
I believe his uncle ended up owning it, and they named it after him or something like that.
Where do I throw this?
Over there.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. You're going to need a lane.
No thanks.
One thing we had a little bit of trouble, I think. I mean, it works pretty well, but the alley sort of expands and contracts in terms of size. It was a very interesting episode for me because we had a lot of new animators. A lot of them were young, fresh out of school, and then teaching them how to draw these characters was quite difficult because there's a simplicity to the characters, but they still have to move in space and have volume. That was a big challenge in the beginning.
And I would assume that David Silverman having to deal with all those new animators is probably the reason for the weird color mistakes in this episode.
So 120 pins later, I am the better man. It is nice to meet you, Homer.
Oh, no. Homer is my ball's name. I'm Marge.
I remember too at this time the idea of a married female lead in a sitcom having an affair, or thinking of having an affair, was really pretty out there.
And a cartoon character.
Yeah.
Unheard of.
With the French cartoons had a Frenchman played by a
Minnie
Jew.
Mouse.
Well, of course, yeah. And Daisy Duck had a couple. We don't talk about that.
Olive Oil's affections were kind of divided. That's a great joke with the shadow over the scorecard. It is really hard to talk over this because Albert Brooks' performance is so brilliant.
Many people have senseless attachments to heavy, clumsy things such as this Homer of yours.
When I tell people that Albert did the voice, they're really surprised. He just doesn't sound like him at all. It's a great character.
I don't want to trouble you.
He doesn't normally do voices. I mean, when you see him in his films, he does, essentially speaks like himself.
Right,
But Albert used to do impressions as part of his...
That's right. Yeah, I forgot. I was just thinking. Because we had limitations in the animation, at least in the beginning, we were limited to how many cells we could use. That the best way to get the dialogue out is with the way it's cut, cutting to different shots and cutting to singles.
Let it out, Marge. Laugh loud. Laugh out loud. You'll lose weight.
Oh, that's very funny.
Feels good.
Hey, that was the first time that Julie actually laughed. That's her actual laugh. She was laughing to an ad-lib of Albert's, right?
Yeah.
And so we started getting these real cool natural laughs from Marge that became part of the staple of her character.
And they were together for the session, weren't they?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, because we did that with Lisa and Dustin Hoffman, too, later.
This episode is in desperate need of a B story.
Does the time always drag like this?
You hungry?
Yes.
4 onion rings.
Not just 2 onion rings, but 4.
Well, he yells it.
Suddenly breaks accent. That's what's great about it.
Yes. Smooth.
I also thought it was funny to cut this, just cut back and forth, back and forth. I think this was the way that John wrote it. It's just sort of the surrealism of that they keep handing it to each other.
This is something we've lost track of the nightly rituals and daily rituals of the Simpsons. Back in the early days, it was very closely observed.
I'm just thinking how much worse a father Homer has gotten.
He actually had some semblance of how to take care of children.
But I think I'll do much better tomorrow night.
Oh? You're going back?
Well, sure. If you don't mind taking care of the kids again.
Playing Homer's reaction with Marge off screen, I thought was very effective. That she says a line and you stay on Homer the whole time, then he reacts to going bowling again. Actually, I believe that may have been the act break originally, and we changed it to later on. One of the reasons I think the show was so long when we first did the animatic, there were in fact 2 bowling montages as the relationship developed. So this was like the first montage, and then we had another montage, I think, in the 3rd act. So we just consolidated the best gags into one.
Yeah, I remember this was one of those shows where the animatic seemed a little slow, and then it really came out great in color.
Marge, darling, I want to see you tomorrow.
Julie's repressed murmur kills me.
A nicely laid out scene by a guy named Istvan Mayors, and he's a very, very good artist.
I always loved the moon looking like a bowling ball.
And the lighting came out really well. I was surprised how well the lighting came out.
Meet me tomorrow for brunch.
What's brunch?
You'd love it. It's not quite breakfast. It's not quite lunch, but it comes with a slice of cantaloupe at the end.
Is he the only guest star that ever improvised anywhere, near that much?
The only guest star that improvised the full half hour of his own material.
Half
He was
hour?
amazing.
More like 3 hours, I think.
I remember speaking to him after he did it, and his thrill was coming up with the definition of what brunch was.
Marge, darling, there are 10 pins in my heart. You've knocked over 8. Won't you please pick up that spare?
All right.
Have you ever been to Hershey, Pennsylvania, Marge?
No.
It's where they make that candy. I was there for a while. I had a bad time there, Marge. I accidentally, I didn't mean to do it, but the car backed up. I didn't know things were behind me. I killed a prize horse. That's why I'm here.
Oh,
I'm on the run, Marge, because the horse isn't. Anyway, my friend.
And I guess originally this wasn't the act break, but when we reconstructed the show after the animatic, this became the act break.
That's a great image, that last image of the act break.
Yeah,
that's great.
Thanks.
I believe when this show aired, it was number 3 for the week. I think this might have been the highest rating, the highest we ever got.
It's funny the things that you remember. I just remember going back and forth on the designs of the lunch bags. You would send something over and fax back with notes. No, make a stuffed animal larger.
This is what psychologists call overcompensation. Mom is racked with guilt because her marriage is failing.
In my opinion, these scenes with Bart and Lisa worrying about their parents' marriage are much more interesting than the story going on between Homer and Marge.
You know what's amazing is how the cast really nailed these characters from day one. I know Dan Castellaneta's voice as Homer changed, but pretty much everybody else was pretty dead on. I mean, Dan was great at the beginning too, but I cannot imagine any other actors doing these characters.
Well, you'd better get used to that idea since this is a Disney franchise now, because sooner or later, all these voice actors are going to pass away from old age. And if you don't think Disney will replace every last one of them, you're crazy. And not only does Disney find the voice actors replaceable, someday they'll even replace Matt Groening and James L. Brooks too.
Marge Simpson. You remember me, don't you?
So in the previous episode, we met Reverend Lovejoy, but now we've got the first appearance of Helen Lovejoy.
I'm Helen Lovejoy, the gossipy wife of the minister.
I think, after we've been looking at the first couple of shows in terms of how things were on model and off model, this is one of the better, on model shows, and I think it started hitting strides on people drawing the characters.
Yeah, I thought in a lot of ways this was a template for season 2. The designs looked more consistent, and the subject matter was more adult, than some of the other early shows.
Real quickly on Helen Lovejoy, we did a lot of animating, just really quick bird-like animation, just to give that sort of snappiness to her.
I remember that the original idea, the name of this coffee shop is Shorty's, and there was going to be a chef's hat going by in the background of a very short chef. We decided it was too stupid.
I want you to meet with me again.
That doesn't shock me.
Away from prying eyes, away from the Helens of the world. At my apartment, the Fiesta Terrace.
And leading into another dream sequence. This was great.
Oh, remember that? The little peephole?
Yeah.
That was a great little joke.
Yeah.
Was the design for Jacques modeled on anybody?
Not really. I can't remember exactly what I didn't really. But
I love the color design on this.
I told the color stylist just put hints of keep it mostly black and white with hints of pink and blue to set the mood for romance. It kind of gave us sort of a very elegant, like almost hand tinted film.
We should do this again. We should do this limited color palette. We haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah, it's good for dream sequences. You did it for Bart the Murderer, I believe.
Yeah, I thought it was just because Fox cut the budget.
So I was thinking of a lot of those surreal Sid Charisse and Gene Kelly dances for the, of course, Fred Astaire type posing. After all the complicated dancing, this was a sort of like a simpler approach, just because we're running out of time.
I've been waiting for you. Come in, my captivating one. How do you like my smoking jacket?
Jacques, it's beautiful color.
Color? It's supposed to be white. I sat in some grape juice. Never mind. May I have this dance?
Sure. You certainly have a lot of bowling trophies.
They're not for bowling, they're for lovemaking. Why they have bowling pins on them, I don't know. Actually, Marge, that's not a bowling pin. Do you know in 5 states it's illegal to bronze that? Champagne?
Please.
It was sent to me accidentally. They got my name mixed up. They thought I was some high-priced lawyer. So I kept the champagne for a special occasion. Do you have an opener?
No, I didn't bring an opener.
Marge, I'm going to do something that I would not ordinarily do. I'm going to break the bottle on the sink. But I'm going to do it in such a way that the glass will not be cut. No. I'm bleeding, Marge! Marge, speak to me.
Marge is pretty hot.
Well, she's a babe.
It's a pretty good shot.
She's a babe. The way Homer stands there with the rounded, slumped shoulders looks very dejected.
We've stopped doing those head-on shots. That was an early decision.
Yeah.
Remember, when the characters are seen straight on, they generally lose their personality, so it's mostly three-quarter profile.
Dad, you didn't even say ouch.
Oh, sorry. Ouch.
Great sound effect. One of the first of Homer's just dropping down like a sack of potatoes. Kind of harkened back to the other episode, Bart the Genius. Same layouts, in fact. And again, I think back in the early days, this lighting was considered like really great looking, and this sort of inspired other things that happened in the second season.
Everyone makes peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, but usually the jelly drips out over the sides and the guy's hands get all sticky. But your jelly stays right in the middle where it's supposed to. I don't know how you do it. You just got a gift, I guess. I've always thought so. I just never mentioned it.
This would be an impossible story to do in live action for a family show. And
yeah, to be creepy.
Yeah, you couldn't look at it.
Well, you think, one of the things I always wanted The Simpsons to be was a celebration, and that maybe because the show is so bright and fast paced, and you know it's going to turn out okay, that you can buy some of this darker stuff.
Well, I think what surprised people initially was that you could really relate to the stories, the way you couldn't to something like the Flintstones.
It's true, because they were about real things happening, not about real things that only happen in sitcoms.
That was one of the first butt cracks on national TV. I don't know whether I should be proud or ashamed.
To the most beautiful moment in life, better than the deed, better than the memory, the moment of anticipation.
It's one of those head-on shots. See why we stopped doing that.
Oh, Jacques, you handsome devil. Look at you. You're really going to strike out tonight! This is the most beautiful moment in life. A man who has just showered, who is staring at himself, being honest about his prowess. A man who has applied the proper amount of toilet water to his chin. A man who has sprayed his mouth so his teeth smell like chocolate mints. Here we go, Jacques. The stage is set. The audience is in. They have finished their orange drink. The orchestra has started to play. A homosexual-looking man has come out on the stage. Let the play begin! The stage is set. The curtain rises. The overture swells. What? Sit down, fat woman! I hate late people in my fantasy. Now, as the lights are out, I shall win a Tony! Whew. I bought too much cologne. Can't return it. Isn't there a law you can't return this stuff if you open it? I'll put on a lot, and maybe I will never have to put it on again. That would be wonderful, wouldn't it, Jacques? Something where you could put it under your skin, and it would deliver just the right amount of cologne all day long. You would always smell like you owned a lot of little poodles. To the most beautiful moment in life. Better than the deed, better than the memory. The application of lipstick to a man. Too red. Perfect. The stage is set. The curtain rises. The overture swells. The apartment's on fire!
So we have the first appearances of Lenny and Charlie. I guess Carl just doesn't exist yet.
Back in the early days where Lenny really had no personality whatsoever.
Yeah, and there's no Carl.
Ain't you hungry, Homer?
Starving.
Well, then why aren't you eating your sandwich?
How can I eat it? She made it. It's all I have left.
Domestic situation.
Please excuse Charlie's incorrect voice.
We used to do occasional morality tales like this. This wasn't an isolated show.
Absolutely, especially I think in the second season.
Yeah, in the early years, I think one way we'd come up with stories is like, okay, which commandment can we think of breaking next?
Yeah,
Stealing and not going to church. Yep.
There we go. Here's our little homage to Robert Frost, right?
He doesn't seem to do that job anymore.
No. Well, he's safety inspector now, right?
He was then, actually.
Oh, really?
I think in real nuclear power plants, people aren't usually handling radioactive material like that anyway.
No. Well, I got other news for you. Plutonium doesn't glow.
And that's life on the fast lane. It's been many, many years since I've seen An Officer and a Gentleman, but I don't remember enjoying it at all. And this marks the last full script in Season 1 that John Swartzwelder wrote, but there is another Season 1 episode that he collaborated on. And even though I'm not a huge fan of this episode, it is the one that got The Simpsons their very first Emmy Award. I think you could actually make the argument that Swartzwelder was carrying this show in Season 1, and even caused the other writers to work even harder just to compete with Swartzwelder, if nothing else. And even though this episode bores me a little bit, I still think it's one of the best episodes in Season 1. I think I like Call of the Simpsons a little better, but this one does keep your attention for the full 23 minutes, which is actually more than I can say about Call of the Simpsons. And with that, I'm gonna get the heck out of here and start working on Homer's Night Out. I'll see you then.